The Plum in the Golden Vase Embroidered Portrait Chongzhen version 68. Count Ying plays with the jade arm and Diana secretly visits the bee matchmaker. The word says, the love is too great, and there will be no rest until old age. The moon, dew, smoke and clouds are all state of things, and the situation and the beautiful woman clearly explain it. Soft words of advice, tenderness and love melt away the iron in your heart and intestines. Kiting holds the lamp, the water flows, and the flowers fade. It is said that Simon King and Li Pinger finished burning paper and went back to Pan Jinlian's room to rest for the night. The next day, first of all, the Earl's family sent them a wedding meal. Huang Si, who was lagging behind, led his brother-in-law Sun Wensheng to slaughter a pig, a jar of wine, to roast geese, for roast chickens, and to boxes of fruits to kowtow to Simon King. Simon King refused again and again, and Huang Si knelt down and said, "My whole family is very grateful for the grace of my father's life. I am not very filial, but just a few meager gifts. How can I not accept it with my father's reward?" After half a day, Simon King stopped accepting the pig wine and said, "I'll leave the money to give you, Dad." Huang Si said, "In this case, it's hard for a villain to be poor and have nowhere to go." He had to carry the soup back. Then I asked, "When will Dad be free?" I asked Uncle Ying and asked Dad to sit down inside. Simon King said, "Don't let him coax you. I'm bothering you again. So why don't you ask me to do it?" Huang Si and his brother-in-law thanked him very much and went out. On the first day of November, Simon King came back from the Yamen and went to the Lizhi County Yamen to have wine. Yunyang was alone, dressed in plain makeup, riding in a sedan chair to Kiao Dahu's house to celebrate her eldest sister's birthday, but she was not at home. Later in the afternoon, Anzu in the nunnery heard Yunyang promise that he would recite sutras and worship the blood basin repentance on the 5th day of the Lunar New Year. So she secretly hid it from Andy Wang and bought 2 boxes of gifts to meet Yunyang. Yunyang was not at home, so Li Jiar and Meng Yulu stayed with him to have tea and said, "Eldest sister went to Mrs. Kiao's house to celebrate her birthday. You have to wait for him to come. He is still talking to you." Then Nanzu sat still. Pan Jinlian thought about how Yu Xiao told him that Yunyang was pregnant after taking his talisman medicine. She also saw that Simon King had taken away her breasts, and she was afraid that the breasts might have given birth to a child and robbed him of his favor. So he let Anzu go to his room in the front, and quietly asked Anzu to give him 1 or 2 silver coins to prepare the fetal chi talisman medicine for him. In the evening, Yunyang, who was waiting for her, came home and stayed with him overnight. The next day, I asked Simon King and asked him for 5 taels of silver. Without telling Aunt Wang and the Great Master, Anzu invited 8 female monks on the 5th day of the Lunar New Year to set up a dojo in the garden shed, chant the Hawaiian and Vajra sutras and mantras, and worship the blood basin treasure. Repent. In the evening, a flame mouth is set up to serve food. On that day, I invited Wu Daguzi, Huada Sao and official guests Uncle Wu, Earl Ying and Wen Shukai to have a vegetarian meal. The nuns don't use the rattles either. They just knock the wooden fish, beat the music with their hands, and recite sutras. On that day, the Count took the Huang family and invited Simon to celebrate with wine at Zheng Iur's house in the courtyard on the 7th day of the lunar month. Simon King read the post and said with a smile, "I won't be free on the 7th day of the lunar month. Zhang Shikun's family will have birthday wine. Tomorrow is free." Asked who else was there. The Count said, "No one else. Only Li Sen and I were invited." Brother Xiang asked his 4 daughters to sing the Romance of the West Chamber. Simon King ordered the 4 members of the Huang family to eat together, and then sent them back to the 6th day of the lunar month. The Earl then asked, "What gift did Huang Si buy that day to thank you?" Simon King said, "I don't accept anything from him. I kowtow repeatedly, but I only receive pig wine. I added 2 pieces of white pheasant silk, 2 pieces of Beijing satin, and 50 taels of silver. Thank you, Mr. Longy." The Earl said, "Brother, it's enough if you don't accept the money. At least 4 pieces of shatu are worth 30 taels. Silver, those 20 taels. Where can I get this? It will help him and save the lives of his father and son." They sat until nightfall that day. Simon King said to the Count, "You will come here tomorrow." The Count said, "I know." He said goodbye. The 8 nuns and monks were in chaos until there were more than 1, And then the monastery was completed, the boxes and warehouses were burned, and they dispersed. By the next day, Simon King had already gone to the Yemen. Let's say that Aunt Wang inquired and learned that Antsu came up early in the morning and said that Antsu had gone to collect the Buddhist scriptures and wanted money. Yu Nang blamed him. "Why didn't you come yesterday? He said you went to Wang Wang's family to celebrate his birthday," Aunt Wang said. "This is the ghost of the old whore of the Zhu family. He told me that our house has moved on the 6th day of the lunar month. He took all the sutra money and didn't leave any of it." Yunyang said, "Why are we still waiting for you? I didn't even recite the sutra. I also left a piece of money-lined cloth here with you." Zhao Xiaoyu quickly laid out some of yesterday's leftover fast food for him to eat and gave him a piece of blue cloth. The Lady Wang murmured and cursed. "This old whore. He printed the scriptures and made Liu Niang a lot of money. I said that this scripture, we two envoys, you went away alone again." Yu Niang said, "Old Zhu said that you received Liu Niang's blood basin sutra for 5 taels of silver. Why didn't you recite it for him?" Mrs. Wang said, "When he was 5 or 7, I invited for masters at home. I've been reading it for half a month." Yunyang said, "You've read it. Why didn't you ask me about it? Just tell me. I'll give you some gifts." Without saying a word, he sat there for a while and went to Antsu's house to shout, "Exactly, Buddhist monks and nuns are one family, and the Dharma will always turns to save Longhua. This thing can only be used to procreate, but it is in vain to use the golden knife to cut off the flowers." But he said that Simon King came back from the Yemen and had dinner, and Earl Ying arrived early again, wearing a new satin hat, agarwood-colored pleats, and powder-soled soap boots. He greeted Simon and said, "It's noon today. It's good to go. I've been invited to his place several times." Simon Qingdo, "We invite Kuichuan to go with us today." Wang Jing said, "Go over and invite Master Wen." Not long after Wang Jing left, he replied, "Master Wen is not at home. He went to see his friends." The Count said. Then he said, "We can't wait for him. Are you looking for friends in the scholar's family? Do you know if we are here? It's true that we have missed the event." Simon King told the piano boy, "Prepare a yellow horse and ride with Ying's second father." The Count said, "I won't ride. Just follow me. Don't ring the bell or play the drum. I'll take the first step, and you can take your time in the sedan chair." Simon King said, "What you said is that you go first." The Earl raised his hand. The hand went first. Simon King ordered Dan, Kin Tong, and the 4 platoon troops to pack up the warm sedan and follow them. Just as he was about to go out, Bing Inner suddenly came from outside with a pair of postcards in a panic and said, "Dadan from the Ministry of Industry is here to pay his respects. I sent an official to deliver the postcards first, and a sedan will come from behind." Simon panicked. King ordered the kitchen at home to prepare meals and sent Lai Xing'er to buy and serve snacks. After a long time, and Langshang arrived, and Simon Qingguan came out to greet him. Mr. N was wearing a colorful cloud lun collar and a golden belt. After entering the door and bowing, the guest and host sat down and brought tea to the left and right. After tea, "Let's talk about the spacious feelings." Simon King said, "Old sir, I am honored to be promoted, and I feel very sad that I am not congratulated. The day before yesterday, I was given a generous gift from Huaza. I was born at the time of the funeral. I apologize for being in such a hurry that I did not attend the reception." Dr. N said, "The student is deprived of his condolences. Ask Sin. I have been to Yunfeng since I was born. I don't know if I can be polite." Simon King said, "That's right. I have to live in Jai's family for a long time." And Langshang said, "Congratulations to Siquin this year." Simon King said, "I have little talent, so I don't dare to look down upon you." He also said, "The old man has been promoted to a good job, and his achievements in river management are admired by the world." And Langshang said, "Meng Siquin, excessive reputation. A Han Confucian insulted Mr. Kai's promotion and neglected water conservancy and repaired the river. When the people were exhausted, they destroyed the gates and dams to transport flowers and stones, causing great public and private hardships. He is also a man of thieves and thieves. And even though he has the talent of a god and a ghost, he is nothing like it." Simon King said, "Mr. Lau's great talent will be ready soon, and he will be promoted." Because he asked, "Mr. Is there a time limit in the imperial decree?" And Langzhong said, after the river work is completed, the Holy Master will send officials to pay tribute to the river god. During the conversation, Simon King ordered the table to be set, and then Langzhong said, "Sir, tell the truth. I have to pay my respects to Huang Taiyu." Simon King said, "In that case, sit down for a while and teach me to eat some snacks." After a while, there was Chun Sheng's wine table, and 16 bowls of rice were served. When the wine is poured, the servants all prepare plates of snacks, wine and meat. Mr. N only ate for 3 minutes at the banquet. Then he said goodbye and got up, saying, "Student, come back later for advice." Simon couldn't keep the money, so he sent it to the front of the gate, got on the sedan chair and left. Returning to the hall, he took off his crown and sash, changed his turban, and straightened his body by wearing purple velvet lion. The messenger asked, "Has Master Wen come yet?" Diane replied, "Master Wen has not returned yet. Uncle Zheng Chen and Uncle Huang came to Dinger's house to invite me. They have been here for half a day." Simon King immediately went out and got on the sedan, followed from left to right, and went straight to Zheng Ayu's house. When they entered the courtyard gate, the framers all ducked aside except for the haiku leader, who stood on both sides, not daring to kneel down to meet him. Zheng Chen and Li Dinger reported first. Earl Ying was fighting with Li San on continents when he heard Simon King coming and quickly stopped. Zheng Ayur and Xianger, wearing sea otter and lying rabbit, a nest of silk hanging from Hangzhou, and flower fairies dressed like them, came out to greet her at the door. Simon King got off the sedan chair and entered the guest seat. Simon King ordered no more blowing and drumming. First, Li San and Huang Si came to see and pay their respects. And then the madam of the Zheng family came out to pay their respects. It was the two sisters Ayur who kowtowed. 2 chairs were placed in the front. Simon King and Earl Ying sat down, while Li Si, Huang Si, and the Zheng sisters sat down. Diane asked from the side, "The sedan is here. Have you gone home?" Simon King ordered the platoon troops and the sedan to go back, and then told the piano boy, "Master Wen is here when I get home. Bring the yellow horse to pick him up." The piano boy should go. The Earl asked, "Brother, why did you come here so late?" Simon Qingshi told him about Mr. and coming to pay his respects for dinner. After a while, Zheng Chen brought tea, and Xianger took one and handed it to the Earl. Ayur handed it to Simon King, and the Earl quickly picked it up with his hand and said, "I picked it up by mistake. I just said you could pass it to me." Ayur said, "I'm going to pass it to you? I have never cultivated such a blessing. Look at this little slut." The Earl said, "She only recognizes his men, but she doesn't care about the guests." Ayur said with a smile, "It's not your turn to be a guest today." After tea, it took a while. All the prostitutes singing the West Chamber came out to kowtow to Simon King and asked their names one by one. Simon King said to Huang Si, "When you come back, come up and sing. Just play the drums and not play the music." Huang Si said, "You know, I know." The buster was afraid that Simon King would be cold, so he taught Zheng Chen to put down the curtain and put some water in the brazier. Lots of animal charcoal. I saw a few people from the round society in green clothes who heard that Simon King was having a drink at Zheng's house. They came to wait on him at the door and put their heads to relax, but they didn't dare to go in. Anyone who recognized Dan paid tribute to Dan and asked him to make it happen. Diane quietly came in to ask questions for him, but Simon King gave him a shout and made everyone flee in a hurry. After a while, the fruit table and wine were brought out, and 2 tables were placed in front. Simon King sat alone, and the Earl and Wen Shukai sat, leaving Wen Shukai seated on the left. Next to them are Li San and Huang Si, and on the right are his 2 sisters. The dishes served are piled with exotic products, and the flowers are placed in golden vases. Zheng Feng and Zheng Chen were playing and singing. After passing the wine and sitting down at the banquet, when Shukai arrived, wearing a bridge scarf and a green cloud jacket, he bowed when he entered the door. The Earl said, "Why are you so late?" "Oh, sir, you've stayed at the table for a long time." When Shukai said, "The student is guilty," he didn't know what the old man called him, so he went to my classmate's place to study. He came a step too late. Huang Si panicked, placed the bell and chopsticks and sit down with the count. After a while, soup and rice were served, and the 2 little boys started playing and singing. for prostitutes came up to sing a song of entertainment in the Central Plains when Diane said, "Aunt Yin sent Wu Hui and Chai Mei to bring tea." It turned out that Wu Yin'er lived behind Zheng's house, just across the street. Lane, I heard that Simon King was having a drink here, so I sent him tea. Simon King called him inside. Wu Hui and Chai Mei kowtowed and said, "Sister Yin asked me to bring tea to Dad." They opened the box and poured tea. Each of them had a cup of melon-flavored tea. Simon King asked, "What is Sister Yin doing at home?" Chai Mei said, "Sister Yin didn't go out today." After having tea, Simon King rewarded him with the 3 coins of silver and ordered Diane and Wu Hui to say, "You please ask Aunt Yin to come." Zheng Aiyuer was anxious and asked Zheng Chun, "You should also go and pester Aunt Yin to come. If he doesn't come, tell me that I won't be his partner by tomorrow." Earl Ying said, "It's funny to me. You two turned out to be gangsters." When Xiu Kai said, "Mr. Nan is very unkind. Since ancient times, we have always spoken in the same voice and asked for the same thing. It's natural to be a clerk with him." Aiyuer said, "Ying Huazi, you and Zheng Chun are both clerks." The Earl said, "Silly boy, I'm an old bastard. Let's have sex with your mother while you're still in the belly." During the joke, the prostitute came up and sang "Half-Thousand Thieves" again. Simon King called the daughter of the Han family who was singing Ying Ying and asked, "Which daughter of the Han family are you?" Xianger said, "Dad, you don't recognize it? He is Han Jinchuan's niece, whose nickname is Xiaochuer. She is only 13 years old this year." Simon King said, "This child will become a good woman tomorrow. She will be smart and sing well." Huangxi was very attentive to the soup and rice. After a while, Wu Yin arrived. On her head, she wears a white crepe bun, a bead hoop, an emerald cloud, and a bunch of small hairpins round it. Wearing a pair of white silk jackets, eyebrow makeup, and a green gauze silk skirt with gold piping on the bottom. On her feet are black satin shoes. He walked in with a smile, kowtowed to Simon King, and then said hello to Wen Shu Kai and everyone else. The Earl said, "I'm so funny. You just teach me how to make me angry when you come here. Am I the Steve mother's daughter? I only recognize your father. Kowtow to him. And look at me every time I bow. It turns out that you, the little lady of Lichen Court, are so wait for the cheater. If I have a 5-stick office, I will not let you go." Aiyuer called out, "Ying Wuzi, you are such a shameless boy. You are so naked." Sister sat down at Simon King's table. Simon King saw that he was wearing a white hairband and asked, "Who are you wearing, Xiao?" Wu Yin'er said, "Dad asked me again on purpose, because I wear Xiao with my mother." When Simon King heard that he was wearing Xiao with Li Pinger, he didn't realize it. Full of joy, he sat side by side with him and the two of them talked. Soon the soup and rice were served, and Ayu came down to offer him wine. Wu Yin'er left the table and said, "I haven't seen Zheng Ma yet." She went to the brothel owner's room to greet him, and when she came out, the brothel owner called, "Sister Yu, let Sister Yin sit down. I'm afraid it's cold, so ask the maid to light a fire for Sister Yin to warm her hands." Then hot dishes were served, and Wu Yin'er only ate half a snack and drank 2 sips of soup. Putting down her chopsticks, she chatted with Simon King. Did Mother come to chant sutras during the 7-day mourning period the other day? Simon King said, "Thank you for the tea during the 5th 7-day mourning period." Wu Yin'er said, "I sent some coarse tea that day, but Dad returned the favor and thanked me for a generous gift, which made Mom so nervous that she refused to accept it. Yesterday, Mother was in the 7th 7-day mourning period, and I met with Jia Yuji and Guiji, who also wanted to send tea, but I don't know if there are any sutras chanted at home." Simon King said, "On the day of the mourning period, we randomly invited a few female monks to do repentance at home. We didn't invite any relatives. I'm afraid it's a bother." While drinking and talking, Wu Yin'er asked again, "Are all the aunts at home well?" Simon King said, "All are well." Wu Yin'er said, "Dad just lost Mom, and now you are alone in your room. Do you miss her?" Simon King said, "Of course I do. I dreamed of her the other day in my study, and I cried so hard." Wu Yin'er said, "He died, so I miss her." The Earl said, "You are telling me such intimate things, but you are just starving me. Instead of serving me a cup of wine, you can sing for me. I'll get up and go." Li San and Huangxi, who were panicking, hurriedly urged their two sisters to come up and serve wine. After setting up the musical instruments, Wu Yin'er also came up. The three prostitutes sat on the table, feet beautiful around the fire basin, and sang a set of 3 plays of Plum Blossoms from Zhonglu, Fendir in unison, which really sounded like cracking rocks and flowing clouds. After the song was over, Simon King said to the Earl, "You asked the 3 sisters to sing, and you come down and give them a drink." The Earl said, "It's okay, it won't kill anyone. Wait for me to send him." Leaning back, stretching straight, lying on his side, standing on one leg, all for my enjoyment. And one more thing, a wild horse trampling in the field, a wild fox spinning silk, a monkey offering fruit, a yellow dog urinating, and a mortal pointing the way. Brother, let him take whatever he wants. Xiang said, "I can't scold you. You thief, you're talking nonsense." Ying Boju put 3 cups on the wine dish and said, "My son, you drink 2 cups from my hand each time. If you don't drink, I'll just splash it on you." Xiang said, "I try on it today." Love Viewer said, "You kneel on your knees and teach me a mouthful." Earl said, "Sister Yin, what do you say?" Fun people, I didn't kneel down. Dare to hurt Aunt you? I promised loudly. The Earl stood up and said, "What a ruthless little whore. You left me a mouthful. You drank the whole cup of wine." Ayuwer said, "Kneel down and wait for me to reward you with a cup." Then she filled a cup and smiled at the Earl's mouth and drank it all in one gulp. The Earl said, "It's your fault, little whore, for being so naughty and sloppy on me. To be honest, this dress, which I wore for only the first day, has already stained me. I'll ask your man for it." After laughing for a while, they returned to their seats. Seeing that it was getting late, the candle was lit. Simon King ordered a dice bowl to be brought, when Xiu Kai was asked to play first. And the scholar said, "How can this be? Let the old gentleman play." So Simon King and Yin'er used 12 dice to compete for the red dice, and the 4 prostitutes below played and sang with musical instruments. After a round of drinking, Wu Yin'er turned around to compete for the red dice with Wen Xiu Kai and the Earl, while Ai Xiang'er came to Simon King's table to pass wine and guess the number. After a moment, Ai approached Simon King to grab the red wine, but Wu Yin'er handed Li San and Huang Si wine to the lower table. It turned out that Ai had just come out of the room with new makeup, wearing a smoky fire pattern brocade double-breasted jacket, a goose yellow Hangzhou silk skirt with green jade and gold thread, embroidered knee-length pants, and bright red phoenix mouth shoes. Under the lamp, the sea otter lying rabbit made her face look even more powdery and white. It is really, the beautiful figure is even more charming. And the spirit of autumn water is as clear as the snow. White jade is fragrant, and flowers are eloquent. And a good night worth thousands of gold is hard to pass. How could Simon King not love her? After drinking a few cups of wine, he was half drunk, thinking about Li Pinger's words in the dream. Don't be greedy and drink outside at night. At the same time, he got up and washed his hands. The panicked brothel owner hurriedly asked the maid to light the lamp and lead him to the back. After he came out to relieve himself, Ai followed and served him. After washing his hands in the basin, he took his hand and went to the room together. In the room, the moonlight was half open, the silver candles were burning. The air was warm like spring, and the orchid and musk fragrance was rich. So they took off their covers and only wore white silk Taoist robes, and the 2 of them stretched their legs together on the bed. First, Ai asked, "Dad, I'm not going home today." Simon King said, "I'm going. 1. I feel embarrassed to have Yin'er here. The other is that I'm an official and I'm here for inspection this year, so I'm afraid of causing trouble. So I just came to sit with you in the daytime." She said again, "Thank you for soaking snails the day before yesterday. You sent them away, and I felt sad for half a day. At that time, only the deceased Liu Niang could pick them up. Now that he is dead, who in the family will pick them up?" Ai said, "It's not difficult to pick them up, but you have to hold the forbidden knot." I cracked the melon seeds one by one in my mouth, and Ying Huazi said that he had eaten a lot. Simon King said, "You asked that embarrassed Huazi, who knocked them away and muttered, 'I ate a lot of it. There's only a little left, so I ate it.'" Ayuwer said, "It's good for the thief, because I'm just being filial to him." She also said, Thank you for the clothes, Dad. Mom saw me eating one and was so happy. He had phlegm and fire, and he coughed in the middle of the night, which was annoying. He often has dry mouth, so he has to hold this in his mouth to produce more saliva. My sister and I didn't eat much, and even the jar was kept in the room for him to eat every morning and evening. Who dares to touch it? Simon King said. It's okay. I'll ask the servant to bring you another jar tomorrow. Ayu asked again. Did Dad meet Sister Gui these days? Simon King said. Since we were in the filial hall until now, who saw him coming? Ayu said. Sixth mother, 5'7". Did he also send tea? Simon King said. His family sent Li Ming to send it. Ayu said. I have something to say, but I will keep it in Dad's heart. Simon King asked. What is it? Ayu thought for a while and said, I won't say it. If I say it, it will be as if I am talking about him behind his back, and I will be embarrassed. Simon King put his arm around her neck and said, Strange little slicker. What did you say? Tell me, and I won't show it to you. The two were talking to the port, when Ying Boju suddenly came in and shouted, You two good people, leave me here and talk about your own things. Ayu, he said. Oh, you are such an unpleasant and embarrassing beggar. You come here so suddenly and scare people. Simon King scolded. You weird dog. Go to the front. The missing Quickshuan and Yinji are there. They are coming to the back. The count sat down on the bed and said, Give me your arms, and I will bite them first. Then I will go. You two are just messing around here. Then he squeezed Ayu's snow-white wrists with the cuffs of his sleeves without saying anything. And praised, My child, your hands are born to be able to make dicks. Ayu said, You weird dog. I can't scold you. The count pulled her over, bit her and laughed. The biting made his wife scream and curse, You weirdo. You came in for no reason and killed someone. Then she called Tawar. Look, he's gone out. Close the door. Ayu then told Simon King about Li Guiji's affair with Wang Sangwaner. How come Sun Guizui, Zhu Mazi, Xiao Zhongxian, Jier Yuquan, Nai Yuer, Bai Huizi and Xiang San, who are always hanging around his house. Now she has abandoned Ji Xiang'er and is having an affair with Qinjie Yuzhir, spending money on the two. When she ran out of money, she pawned her fur coat for 30 taels of silver and took a pair of gold bracelets from his wife, and put them at Li Guiji's house as a month's living allowance. After hearing this, Simon King cursed. This little whore, I told you not to get involved with this boy, but she didn't listen and even cursed me. Just trying to please me. Ayu said, Dad, don't be angry. I will tell you a way. Maybe Wang Sangwan will get slapped in the mouth to vent your anger. Simon King held him in his arms and said, My son, if you have any way, tell me. Ayu said, I will tell you, father, but don't let anyone know. Even Yingwezi should not mention it to her, for fear that it will be spread. Simon King said, Tell me. I am stupid. How could I let anyone know? Zheng Ayu said, Mrs. Lin, the wife of Wang Sangwan, is less than 40 years old this year, and she is very beautiful. She draws eyebrows and paints eyes, and dresses like a fox. Her son stays in the yard all day, but she stays at home, just looking for an affair. She pretends to be a vegetarian in the aunt's nunnery, and then stays at the matchmaker Wensour's house. Wensour is the only one who goes in with him, saying that it is a good affair. I will tell you, father, it will not be difficult to meet her and me tomorrow. Another coincidence, Mrs. Wang Sangwan is going to she is only 19 years old, and is the niece of the 6th Huang Taiwei of Tokyo. She is as pretty as a painter, and is good at backgammon and chess. Sangwan is often not at home, and she feels like a widow, so she is so angry. She was hanged 2 or 3 times for him, but was saved. Daddy has killed his mother first, so you don't have to worry about not having your wife. At that moment, Simon King was so confused by her words that he hugged the prostitute and said, My dear, how do you know this? Ayu did not say that she often sang at his house, but only said, I am an acquaintance. I met his mother somewhere like this, and it was Wensour who arranged it. Simon King asked, Who is that person? Could it be Zhang Erguan, the nephew of the big man Zhang in the street? Ayu said, That Zhang Mode, a good-looking guy, with a pockmarked face and two tightly sewn eyes, is just trying to kill me. So the servants of Jiang's family had to take him in. Simon King said, I can't guess who it is. Ayu said, Let father know. It's a southerner who seduced me. He comes here twice a year to do business. He doesn't rest for a night or two, but he often steals cats and dogs with people outside and does this kind of business. Simon King heard that the prostitute's work was in line with his rhythm, and he was also happy. He said, "My child, since you are so attached to me, I will give your mother 30 taels of silver every month for travel expenses, and you don't have to take people in. I will come when I am free." Ayur said, "Dad, if you have a crush on me, what 30 or 20 taels? Just rob a few taels of silver from mother. I am so lazy that I don't want to keep you. Just serve you." Simon King said, "What are you talking about? I will definitely give 30 taels of silver." After that, the two went to bed and made love. The quilt on the bed was about 1 foot high. You asked, "Dad, do you want to take off your clothes?" Simon King said, "Let's play with our clothes on. I'm afraid they are waiting for us." At the same time, he pulled the pillow over, and the girl took off her lower clothes and lay on her back beside the pillow. Simon King carried her to small golden lotuses on his shoulders and buttoned her blue silk pants and used the support. But the flower heart was slightly bent, and the willow waist swayed. It was exactly. The flower is tender and soft, and the spring breeze has not stopped. The flower heart is still not satisfied, and the love is endless. Calling the girl softly, the spring night is not over. The two made love for a long time, and when they were about to ejaculate, Simon King was panting, and the girl kept making sweet sounds. Her hair dragged on the pillow, and she kept saying, "Dear, slow down." After a while, the joy was so strong that they ejaculated. The clouds and rain stopped, and they tidied their clothes and washed their hands, and came to the table hand in hand. Wu Yin'er and Ai Xiang'er were playing dice and guessing numbers with Kui Zhuan and the Earl, drinking and having fun. When everyone saw Simon King come in, they all stood up and offered him a seat. The Earl said, "You are such a lowly person. You left us here and then came out. Take some wine and hold your head." Simon King said, "I just want to talk to you. What's the point of doing that?" The Earl said, "Good words. You two are talking about your own things." Then the Earl took a big bell and poured warm wine. Everyone accompanied Simon King to eat, for prostitutes played musical instruments and sang. Diane sat beside him. "The sedan chair is here." Simon King nodded to him, and Diane quickly ordered the soldiers to light lanterns and wait outside. Simon King did not sit down either, but stood up with everyone holding cups and drinking. He ordered the 4 prostitutes, "Sing at first sight shy for me." Han Xiaochuer picked up the pipa, sang in a charming voice, "At first sight shy, the rain and the clouds are in love." I saw him charming, enchanting, and gentle. Tong Shu first hooked the words, conveying his feelings with a glance. "Keep it in mind. In my heart, I don't know when it will be fulfilled." After singing one, Wu Yan'er handed Simon King the wine, Zheng Zhong'er handed the Earl, Ayuir served when Shu Kai, Li Zi and Huang Si both poured. The 4 prostitutes sang another one. After eating, everyone exchanged turns, and the prostitutes sang to more. After the singing was over and everyone had drunk, Simon King stood up and asked Diane to take out 11 bags of rewards from his book bag. 3 cents for each of the 4 prostitutes, minus 1 cent for the kitchen servant, 3 cents for each of Wu Hui, Zheng Chun, and Zheng Feng, 2 cents for each of the tea-making staff, and 3 cents for the maid Tao Huer. They all kowtowed to thank him. Huang Si repeatedly refused to let go, saying, "Second Uncle Ying, please say something. It's still early. Old man, please sit down. It's a favor to you. Why do you have to get up? My aunt you, please stay too." Ayuer said, "I asked him to sit down, but he refused to sit down." Simon King said, "You don't know, I have something else to do tomorrow." At the same time, he bowed to Huang Si and said, "I'm sorry to bother you." Huang Si said, "I'm so sorry. I asked you to come here to suffer hunger, and you don't want to sit down for a long time. It's just that I'm disrespectful." As he spoke, the 3 singers kowtowed and said, "When you come home, I'll take care of Aunt and the other ladies. When I'm free, I'll meet Sister Yin and go to the house to see Aunt." Simon King said, "When you're free, go sit down." In the past, the lanterns were handed down, and Simon King stepped down. The Earl was about to follow, and was stopped by Huang Siki, saying, my second grandfather. If you go, you will not be interesting. Master Wen has a head mouth here, Qin Tong said. Buy the donkey here. And the Tonger watched the mile. Simon King said to Wen Shukai, both heads. So old are you? You will accompany the second brother to sit. I will go first. Zhang Yuer took Simon King's hand and squeezed it quietly, saying, Dad, you should take my words to heart. The law should not be spread to others. Simon King said, I know. You called Chongzhen again. You take Dad home. Simon King got on the sedan chair. Wu Yin'er said goodbye to everyone and the two Zhang sisters at the door. And Wu Hui went home with a lamp. Zhang Yuer called, Yin'er, don't tell anyone about the vagrant you saw. Wu Yin'er said, I know. Everyone returned to the banquet, added more animal charcoal, and played music again. They sang and danced, played music, and drank happily until the third watch. Huangzi arranged the banquet and gave him 10 taels of silver, which was a piece of cake. That day, Simon King took the sedan chair, and the platoons of soldiers lit the lanterns and went out of the courtyard to send Chongzhen home. The night scene was described. The next day, Jia, the criminal officer, agreed to invite Simon King to the Yamen to interrogate the thieves and other matters, and asked until noon when he came home. After dinner, Uncle Shen sent a high official, Shen Ding, with a note to bring a young man who worked as a cook in the satin shop, named Liu Bao. Simon King stayed behind and was in the study when he took the note and went home with Shen Ding. Seeing Diane standing beside him, Simon King asked, Master Wen, did you come here yesterday? Diane said, I slept in the shop for a long time. I only heard the painting boy knocking on the opposite door, so I came at 3 o'clock in the morning. This morning, Master Wen didn't have any wine. Ying was drunk and spit all over the floor, and he was afraid that it was late at night, so she asked Chongzhen to send him home. Simon King laughed and called Diane to come over and said, Where does Sister Wen, who was a matchmaker for your brother-in-law, live? Find her and meet me in the house opposite. I will talk to her. Diane said, I don't know Sister Wen's house. Wait for me to ask my brother-in-law. Simon King said, Go and ask him quickly. Diane went to the shop and asked Chen Jingji. Jingji said, Why ask him? Diane said, Who knows what he does? Well, Mink taught me to catch him. Jingji said, Go south from East Street, turn east after passing the Tongren Bridge archway, and go into Wangjie Lane. There is a hall for dispatching police officers halfway up the street. There is a stone bridge opposite the door. Turn the stone bridge and there is a small alley next to the Ants Nunnery. Next to it is a small alley. Go west in the small alley, next to the third tofu shop. Up the hill, there is a double-leaf red door opposite. That is his house. Just call Wen Ma and he will come out to answer you. Diane heard it and said, No more. The little furnace maker followed the incense burner, trivial and dissolute. Tell me again. I'm afraid I have forgotten. Chen Jingji repeated it again. And Diane said, What a short way. Wait for me to ride a horse. He let out a big white horse and rode on it. He whipped the horse and the horse ran and jumped, and went straight away. After exiting East Street, head south, past the Tongren Bridge archway, and enter Wangjie Lane. As expected, there is a patrol hall in the middle. Opposite the door is also a broken stone bridge. The half-red wall inside is Dabai Temple. Going uphill in the small alley to the west, there is a tofu shop. At the door, there is a mother drying horse manure. Diane asked on horseback, Old mother, is there a matchmaker Wen Sao here? The mother said, She is the one next door. Diane arrived at his door and indeed there were 2 red doors. He jumped off his horse and knocked on the door with his whip and shouted, Is Wen Sao at home? His son Wen opened the door and asked, Where are you from? Diane said, I am the old man of Ximen, the former judge of the county, and I am here to invite you. Tell Wen Ma to go quickly. Wen heard that he was from the mansion of Ximen, the former judge, and asked him to sit down. Diane tied up his horse and went in. There were offerings of lucky money on the table, and several people were counting their incense. After half a day, he took out a cup of tea and said, My mother is gone. I told her at home that I should go early tomorrow. Diane said, The donkey is at home. How can I say she is not here? He turned aside and walked back. Unexpectedly, Mrs. Wen and his wife were drinking tea with some Taoist mothers. They were unable to hide and were seen by him. They said, "Isn't this Mother Wen? Just say I'm not at home." Mrs. Wen smiled and bowed to Diane, saying, "Thank you for coming home. I will have tea at home today. I don't know why my father called me. I'll go early tomorrow." Diane said, "I thought I came to find you, but who knows what he is doing. It turns out that you live in this place, and I've been looking for you for a long time." Mrs. Wen said, "In recent years, he has bought maids, arranged matchmaking, and used flowers. He has old Fang, Mrs. Su, and Mother Wang to play around. He doesn't care about me. Today, the beans in the cold pot are bursting again. I guess you since Liu Niang is gone. He must have asked me to find a marriage for him and fill the void for Liu Niang." Diane said, "I don't know. My father will have something to say to you when you get there." Mrs. Wen said, "In that case, brother, please sit for a while. I will send the tea party away and then go with you." Diane said, "My father is waiting for me at home and is getting very angry. He has been telling you to go quickly. After talking to you, he will go to the home of Mr. Luo, the magistrate, for a drink." Mrs. Wen said, "Well, wait for me to get some snacks for you and then I will go with you." Diane said, "No." Mrs. Wen asked, "Has your aunt given birth to a baby?" Diane said, "I haven't seen it yet." Mrs. Wen sent Diane to eat some snacks. He put on his clothes and said, "You ride first and I will walk slowly." Diane said, "You have a donkey. Why don't you ride it?" Mrs. Wen said, "How can I ask for a donkey? The donkey is from the tofu shop next door. They lent it to me in my yard to feed it. You can treat it as mine." Diane said, "I remember you came here riding a donkey. Where did you go?" Mrs. Wen said, "This is us. That year a maid was hanged to death, and the old house was sold for a lawsuit. Now let's talk about the donkey." Diane said, "The house is not a big deal. You can keep the donkey to keep you company day and night. As for the other thing, I see he often drops a big whip." Mrs. Wen laughed and said, "Strange monkey. What's the matter with you? Short life." Old lady just took it as a good word and listened with sideways ears. "I haven't seen you for a few years, and you have learned to be so smooth talking. Tomorrow, you will teach me to find a husband." Diane said, "My horse is fast. You walk. How long will it take for us to ride on the equator? Won't it make Dad angry? You also get on the horse, and we can ride side by side." When Sour said, "It's your fault that you were short-lived. I'm not your insinuation. People on the street look at you. It's weird." Diane said, "If not, you can prepare a donkey from the tofu shop and ride it, and wait there for me to pay him." When Sour said, "That's still what I said." At the same time, she told Wen to prepare the donkey, put on the veil, and ride it. Diane and him went straight to Simon King's house. It is just like, if you want to find a beauty in the boudoir, you can rely on red leaves as a good matchmaker.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.